there, Christina Hawkins from Moving Marketing Results, and I'm going to talk you through or explain to you the importance of optimizing your website for speed and performance. It is essential, essentially nowadays, to make sure that your website loads fast, it is easy to use, things don't jump around. And I'm going to walk you through, there's about I have 9 items here. I did this blog post recently. I've been building out websites. I've been in this industry now for over 2 decades. Started out in the IT industry for sure, Defense Department, and from there did my own programming. It got a little bit out of control for me. I now have staff that does our development for us, and they are rocking it when it comes to building websites, where we try to be as efficient as possible. But one of the most important things that we look at is the performance of the website. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what each of these are. The blog post is helpful in a sense that it kind of describes it, but it's a lot easier if I show you what these are. It gets a little technical, so I'm going to try and explain each one bit by bit. So the first one is for sure why speed is crucial. And really, I know I'm this way. I don't like it when I go to a website on my mobile phone and it loads slowly. I'm sitting or waiting and waiting. And anything that lasts more than, my blog says few seconds, I would say the goal is to get under 2 seconds. At least that first, what we call first content paintful, that first image that shows up on the site, at least something is coming. So if nothing is showing up, there is that hesitation. And 53% of the people will leave a website if it's taking longer than 3 seconds. That's not a long time. 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, they're gone. So almost half of your traffic will leave if your site is not fast enough. For moving companies, this can mean for sure lost business, and it does affect your rank on Google. Google is all about the experience, the user experience. And over the years, it has gone, it keeps adding to what that user experience is. When we first did it, it was tables in the background, coding tables, literally. And we would chop up images. It was just so image-based. It was always slow, in addition to the fact that we were on dial-ups. So it was really, really slow. But now, as we've kind of grown up, we now have style sheets. We don't need all of the images to create a really good website. All the background chopped up images. We used to chop them up in Photoshop. It was so time consuming. But again, just like Google, just as with Google's always asking us to improve our site, one of them was having a secure server. So the HTTPS, the SSL encryption, when we come up here, this will show us if it's encrypted or not. And that was a big, big jump. We had to get everybody involved. Everybody had to get encrypted. And now if you're not, Google kind of they don't penalize you. They're not going to rank you very high. It just shows that you have an outdated site. Again, if it's sluggish, people just kind of lose patience. And I forget if we go through here, I've got some options that we'll go into what Google's terminology for first content paintful and all these different ways of what is a high performing website, which is part 2. How do you know? How do you test if your website performs well? Well, we have 3 tools. We use these 2. This one's Pingdom is a good one too. GTmetrix we use internally. We have the premium version and we just monitor it. So if you're on any of our programs, we can see when something starts to slow down. So it's an indicator for us that something's wrong. And it could be any number of things. Somebody uploaded a 10 megabyte image. They embedded a video, they added some code, something happened. And usually we can go in and fix it. Sometimes we can't. We just have to either remove whatever it is that was causing it or come up with another solution. Google Page Speed Insights is kind of the de facto. That is Google telling you if your site is slow and giving you an explanation. I'll show you what that looks like here. So here we've got a web page URL. I'm just going to actually just move. I'll use one of our clients in here. So we're going to go here and let's see what it runs into. Now I haven't touched this in a while. We'll see what it comes back as. it takes a while. Give it a second. Now you'll notice we've got a mobile version and a desktop. Mobile obviously is number one. That's the first and foremost that you want to make sure that your site loads quickly on, because especially for moving companies, over half of your audience is going to be on a mobile device, an iPad, and then we have a desktop. So you'll see we've got 83, not bad. There's some obvious improvements that we can do here. Accessibility as well. There's probably some things that might have not the right contrast. So visually, we might find some buttons that might have, we might need a brighter text on a darker background. And you can see we've got the FCP, LCP, TBT, CLS, and SI. Those are all down in here. So the first thing is telling us the first content paintful. That is the first run that people see, and that's taking 2.3 seconds. Like I said, under 2 seconds is optimum. And this is where we see the screenshots, nothing, then first content paintful. That took 2.3 seconds. So that's telling me there's something in here that we need to adjust. It could be code, it could be an image. Sometimes people really like to put video on that homepage. It's interesting, a little engaging, you can kind of see movement happening. I'm not a fan of those. I think that truly slows down the site. People don't watch your movie. They don't want to see that kind of stuff, but they will watch a video. I'm not saying do video. I'm saying embed a YouTube video and let me watch your video about your business. I just don't believe in the background unless you're some, fashion, I don't know, high-end fashion. I just don't think it's necessary. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. And so down here, it gives you a lot of clues of what you can do to fix this. Now, if you don't have a webmaster, this might not make a whole lot of sense to you. I've got a webmaster, so I'm going to go back to her and tell her there's a few things on here we want to make sure we can do. Now, what causes a lot of this are themes. Some people get really bad themes. Some people have a site that's coded very heavily. And there's just, we've a site, we didn't build it. It was built 4 or 5 years ago. There's just only so much we can do with a poorly coded site beyond recoding it. And this is where we have to have a conversation with you as to what that decision is. Where are we going to invest in a new site and recode it, or are we going to live with this? We do build other sites other than moving sites. I have another agency, and one of the sites, his website is so slow on mobile that it's an e-commerce site. He literally loses, you could see it dropping. He loses mobile customers. And so next year is where he's putting a budget aside to build out a new site so that he doesn't lose half of his audience when he comes to it. And I would say the same thing with moving companies. Always, 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 how fast is your site coming up on a mobile device, on your phone? Now, here's that large content paintful. There is usually an image on here. This tells me there's probably an image on the mobile version. This image, I'll tell my developer to go back, and on a mobile device, I don't want that image, or get a different image on mobile and make it super small so that this loads much, much faster. There's other things in here. Sometimes people have a lot of JavaScript in there because there's some tracking tools. People might have chatbots. You might have analytical tools. And all of that is JavaScript. Every time you add a piece of code to the site, it takes longer for your browser to create and show you the site, because again, there's a lot of stuff in the background that is causing it to slow down. I'm sorry, there's JavaScript, it's rendering, there's images, it's got a lot. So this is kind of showing you all the things that is occurring that could be the problem. If you've got code in the background that hasn't been properly compressed. So when somebody's typing out your website, your code, usually it's a CSS, a cascading style sheet that kind of gives you the display in the front. If that's not properly minimized, the extra spaces and carriage returns and all of that bloats that code. And that makes, and every time you have a CSS file, that's just a millisecond longer for the computer to download it, render it, show it. So if you've got multiple CSS, so here we've got one here that's telling us, hey, there's 3 style sheets in here that aren't being used. We recommend that you just don't use these. So some of them you can't help it. Again, going back to that same conversation before, there's only so much I can do here. I need some of the CSS, and maybe on the homepage it's not being used. I might be using in others. So we'll come up with a way to kind of fix this. But here's one that's properly sized images. Somebody uploaded a Google Guaranteed badge, and it's telling me that's awfully big. So you can see it's 610. Now it's a simple badge. So that I would go back and say, let's choose a much smaller version, compress it. We have tools that automatically compress images. So if you upload a, I don't know, 50 kilobyte, we can compress it to maybe 5 kilobytes, and every kilobyte counts. So every time we upload, the tool will compress it and do as much as it can to reduce that file size. So this is an area I'm going to go back to the developer and say, hey, these 2 images need to be compressed. Now, just so you know, I don't have to do this. We've got reports that automatically get sent to the developer on these kinds of things. So I was mentioning GTmetrix. We've got other tools that will send an email out and say, hey, the site's loading really slow. Let's look at these 5 things. But this is just one of those. This is the one I would recommend that you look at for yourself. Here's the desktop version. Usually the desktop is much better. And because obviously it's a desktop, it just usually you're hooked up, you've got pretty strong Wi-Fi, it's sitting at your desk, so it just loads much faster. And you can see our first content painful drops to half a second. And this is where, so don't get fooled when someone tells you, oh, hey, look, no, it's all great. This is really the one that matters the most. This is easy for us to get. This is where I'm like, ooh, there's a couple things. Now, if you're in the 40 or 30 or 20, that's a big problem. 83, we should work on it. It's not terrible. It's not horrible. It's fixable is really what it is. And it's not terribly expensive to fix it. There's an easy ways around it. But don't be fooled when people send you these. Mobile is the most important thing you want to look at. All right, moving back over here. You can see this is, I just did a screenshot here. So optimizing your images. As I mentioned, when you upload a photo, always make sure it's the right size. It's when people ask us, what photos should I send you? From a file size, I tell them, send us the biggest version you have. We will crop it, shrink it, whatever we got to do for that. And especially on WordPress, we can upload, it'll create 3 or 4 different versions of the image, small, medium, large, and original. So depending on the context of that image on that page, I can choose the right image. Maybe it's the medium size, it's 1,000 pixel width. That's a good size without making it look fuzzy and unreadable. It's still a clear image, but it's not the original file size that might be 3,500 width pixel and 10 megabytes. So always choose the right size for that image. That will help. So if you do see that performance and that image, let me go back over here, that image in here where it's saying, hey, this is a problem. Let's go back down here, the properly sized, that's an indicator to you that either an image is too big or it hasn't been compressed from a large megabyte to a small kilobyte. So always do that. There are tools like TinyPNG, and I'll go back and add links to these. TinyPNG, ImageOptim, Short Pixel is the one that we like to use. And again, we have the professional version. We have a streaming version of Short Pixel. So all of our sites, every single time an image, it gets automatically compressed. Now, the next one is your content delivery network. This is the one, super tech on this end. Your IT guy will know what this is. If I were in the IT field, more so when it comes to networks and email and all that, I would prefer if somebody's domain was sitting on a CDN. Now, why do we choose a content delivery network? We use Cloudflare, and Cloudflare sits between your domain registration, typically GoDaddy, Network Solutions, one of those. It sits in between your web host server and your network, your Google registration or your domain registration. And it uses the DNS. So when we take over, we move everyone to Cloudflare, all we do is update the DNS that's on your domain registrar. That DNS is kind of like the internet's post office database. So it's telling the internet where to find your house. It'll have usually Cloudflare uses like words like Mary.Cloudflare. Something like that in the DNS. And then we have an IP address that points to your website. But the cool thing about Cloudflare, there's a couple of things about Cloudflare. One, it helps speed up that process because it is distributing, it is holding your, not physically holding, but it is taking all those images and it is going to distribute them based on where you're located. Meaning if I'm over in Seattle versus Florida, there is milliseconds. If the server is near Florida and someone is over in Seattle, it's a few milliseconds for them to get that image. What Cloudflare does is it distributes those images on different networks. So if I'm in Seattle, I'm accessing that image or that network closer to me. So it just milliseconds faster. The other is security. I'm able to block something if I'm noticing that we're getting bombarded with bot hits. We can turn on, and I don't know if you've ever seen it where it'll show Cloudflare is loading for just a moment, because it's usually that's a sign that the site is getting hit really hard by bots. Happens all the time. It doesn't matter how big, how small your website is, your site can get bombarded. And what Cloudflare does is it kind of acts as a go-between. It protects the site, it speeds up the site. The other is we've got all kinds of tools to filter. So I don't really need anybody in China looking at your site. I don't. There's nobody in China that has any business looking at a moving company unless you're a big, national brand and you're global. That's fine. But if you are a small business in Florida and you service Floridians and maybe one or two, you don't need anybody in China looking at it. You don't need anybody in Russia. So we can block whole countries from seeing and accessing your site using Cloudflare. Another item about Cloudflare that I really like is the fact that I can give access to different people. You no longer have to give somebody access to your domain registration, which to me is a little dangerous. I get so many people wanting to send me their login and password to their GoDaddy. What we prefer is you give us access, limited access. So if you've got somebody coming to you and says, we need access to your GoDaddy, give us a login and password. Do not do that. One of two things: give them access as a user with limited capabilities. They can update the DNS, they can do that, but they cannot get in there, change anything else other than maybe the DNS. That's all they need to do. Or you have Cloudflare. And that way you still have absolute control over your domain, but Cloudflare sits over here. I can add IT people to Cloudflare. They can do whatever they need for the email, their IT, their internal network structure, whatever they need inside Cloudflare without having any business being over in GoDaddy or Network Solutions or anything. So this is another reason why we love Cloudflare. It's really, there is no option. This is what we do every single time. Another is minimizing your HTTP requests. So every single time, like I mentioned earlier, you add something to the site. You add a plugin, you add a tracking script, you add forms, you add connections like video, you add, those are all, that's something that the website has to constantly go after and pull in from the server. So your browser, when your website downloads, it's constantly going back to the server and grabbing little things, code, images, text, CSS files, all the stuff that makes a website a website. And all of those are what we call HTTP requests. Google Analytics, it's got to call in the JavaScript for Google Analytics, got to go to Google Analytics and let them know who's come to the site. You've got Google Search Console. We like to use Google Tag Manager because it's one script. And then we put all that stuff over in Google Tag Manager, all the conversions, all that over there. And it manages a little bit like Cloudflare. I can give people access to that rather than the website. So again, there's tools inside WordPress, especially plugins that help us merge CSS, merge JavaScript files. You have to be really careful using it. Sometimes with these caching plugins is what we call them. There's WP Rocket is one. There's a few, I can't think of them off the top of my head right now, that will do all the compression, combining JavaScript files, combining image or style sheets, all of that together. Now, you have to be careful because that can break the site. So what my programmer does is she knows which to accept. So yes, take all 5 style sheets, combine them, except this one. This one needs to be separate. If we don't, it breaks the site. It goes weird, squirrely, things are all over the place. So be really, really careful using these caching plugins. That is for sure one of those tools, which I get into here in website caching, as to we just have to be careful with how you do use the website caching tools. Try not to do everything that it recommends. So if you do turn something on inside the website caching, let me see if I can show you what that looks like. So here is WP Rocket. So this is the back end of our website here. And this is a caching tool. You can see right off the bat, there is a lot going on here. And what we don't recommend is that you turn everything on. What you do is you come in here and you do the first, hit save, go to your website. What's it look like? Minify is a huge one too. If you minify the JavaScript files, that can cause problems. So we want to exclude certain ones. So here's one where excluding a particular tool that we use for our CRM. We don't want to combine that file. It breaks things don't get tracked properly. So we exclude that specifically. There's things that we don't need every single JavaScript file, everything loading all at once at the very beginning. Some of the stuff can be done after the site is loaded visually for a better user experience. People see the site, they engage with the site. And then behind the scenes, JavaScript is loading at the very end, but people don't see that. That can affect performance, but that's a little bit what these tools like WP Rocket do, is they give you that opportunity to kind of adjust when JavaScript files, again, what the site is constantly calling back to the server to bring back to the website. And let me go back to the HTTP requests again, because this also incorporates video. Back to my concept of having a video in that header. That is something that is streaming, and it's being called, it's a video, so it's got to go to YouTube, call it in. That's an HTTP request. And this is, again, why I don't like them in the header. Now, enabling website caching, we just talked about. Just be real careful when you do have this. Just take it one step at a time, do it slow. The CDN that we talked about, Cloudflare, does this as well, just not as much. So we tend to use both, but again, we have to be really careful. Now, I would say the 7th one, this is a biggie that people don't really recognize very well, and that's choosing your hosting company. It does play a very big role in how your website performs. Large companies, I'll say it like GoDaddy, GoDaddy. Your site is on one server and you share it hundreds, maybe 1,000 or more, and you are sharing the same resources as every other website on there. In addition, they are not going to customize their server to make sure your site loads faster. That is not in their brain. Now, maybe the upper tiers, I'm talking about the $8 a month, $10 a month, $15 a month, $5. You are sharing. The reason why it's so cheap is that you're one of 1,000, if not more, 2,000, 3,000 on one server. And imagine 1,000 websites constantly being called. You're sharing those resources. You're sharing RAM space, storage space, all of that with everybody else. Meaning if somebody comes to another website, they've taken all the your site could be slow because of it. And on the flip side, they are not going to tweak the server. We've taken sites over where they're still on very, very old server setup, meaning like Unix is the software server for most for Unix based servers. You can get Windows-based servers, Unix-based, uses a programming language called PHP. That's where WordPress needs PHP on a Unix host. Yes, you could do it on a Windows host, I get it, but it's best on a Unix host. And so web hosters have Unix and PHP. PHP is like any other software. You have to keep it updated. We're now PHP 8. We just updated all of our clients to PHP 8. We had 2 websites that we could not upgrade because they were 15 years old. I can't upgrade in PHP because the site would just completely die. So we've been very clear to them, you have to move your site. These cheaper hosting companies are not going to force somebody to move. They're going to keep the servers as is. They might upgrade. I haven't seen them actually do that. Most of the time they go as long as they possibly can on different servers without upgrading, because it's a pain to upgrade 1,000 plus. And you think about companies like GoDaddy, millions and millions of websites. So it's what we do is that we try and keep updated. Again, as you're updating your site, which we'll talk about later, there's software on there that have to be upgraded, not only for security purposes, but also just for performance purposes. And the fancier computer, the fancier our phones get, the more we have to keep updated. Our websites, our servers, our code all has to keep updated with this new technology. Many of these hosting companies don't do that. So I would, WP Engine is a good hosting company. They're really strict. We're actually moving most of our clients away from what WP Engine. SiteGround is pretty good. Bluehost, I wouldn't quite recommend. I'll have to put in another list of the specific hosting companies that we would recommend. The cheaper the hosting account, the more likely you are one of thousands, again, sharing resources. Just be really careful who your hosting company is. The other issue we don't like using these types of companies is the tech support is very poor. I just experienced this yesterday. The client called their hosting company. They were going to charge her $50, something like that, just to make a very simple switch. I can't remember what it was, but it was something that it takes 30 seconds to do. Like, it's just something we just do, but they billed her, and I don't understand why, but anyway, it is what it is. But because they don't know any better, and they can bill you for things that you don't really need. So I don't, all to them, they're making a buck. That's great. But there's just certain things that you don't need to be billing people. All right, moving on. We do want to reduce redirects and fix broken links. This is just more from a user experience. And, we all don't like it when I click a link and I get a 404 error. So part of what we do on a regular maintenance basis on any website is check for broken links. And again, one of those automatic reports, usually it's an external link that's broken. Another is redirects. Too many, I've seen circular redirects where we start with one page, and it comes back and it's still broken. But the more redirects you do of a single point, the slower getting to that page is. So try to reduce redirects. If you delete a page, always add a redirect for it. How long should you keep those redirects? It just kind of depends. You might want to check with Google Search Console to see if that is even indexed anymore, that old page. Over time, Google will update its index so that old page doesn't work is an index, but there might be a website out there that has linked to the old page. So it just kind of depends what you would like to see done, how well your redirects are. But I think it's just something you want to manage. But they can slow your site down, frustrate your users. Every redirect adds extra time to the loading process. Broken links create dead ends. Screaming Frog is a great tool. We use that as well. That gives you a really great indicator of how many pages. It gives you a good insight of your entire website. It'll show you broken links. It'll show you missing H1 title tags. So you can, and I'll share with you what that looks like. Now, this is just a website that I just Googled pretty quickly to show you what Screaming Frog looks like. And I think we have a license, but there is a free version. You can see these are broken down into every single file that it's pulling. So what I like to do is go into the H1s and I can see which pages and what the H1 tag is. So that's the title, not the meta title, the actual title of that page. I can see the locations is missing in H1. I don't know if that's done on purpose or what, but for us, I would want to go to that page and see why are we missing an H1 tag. The other thing is how many times is an H1 shown? H1 heading tags should only be shown one time per page. The other is what's the length of it? Kind of depends what your preference is. 2, here's H1 length. So these are H1, then you have H2 tags, right? Yeah, these have 2 H2 tags, this one doesn't have any H2, that's on the contact page, privacy policy page, the estimate page. So some of these don't need full-on content, with H1, H2, H3s, paragraphs, bullets, all that. You don't need all that for every single one. But it's a really great way of what's missing. And to the right, you can see if there's any broken links. Let me see where our broken links are. Links. And I think here's where, yeah. So all of these pages we have links to. You can see that we've got no index. So this page makes sense. It's CGI. This one's got reviews. We don't want to index that. I'm not sure why, unless there's a review page, they prefer it to be indexed. Canonicalized, and I'm trying to see where the broken links are. Links, issues, links. So links without internal outlinks, pages without internal outlinks. Where is they might not have any broken links, which is good on them. Let's see, I don't think we have broken links. We got images with missing alt text. It depends if you want to fix something like that. These are old, you can see 2022. Page is the same H1. They might not have broken links. Unless I'm just missing it. But this is where you would look for any issues on the site. So again, we love Screaming Frog. It's a really great auditing tool. All right, back over here. Reduce your redirects, fix your broken links. Number 9, final one, monitor and maintain your site regularly. So website speed isn't something you fix once and forget it. Updates, website updates, plugin updates, WordPress core updates, server updates, technology updates, small changes, content updates, all of that will affect the performance of the website. You need to regularly test your site speed. If you don't have a webmaster, once a month, absolutely check the speed, what's causing any problems. For sure, update your plugins and your themes. Keep those suckers updated. It's not only from a security standpoint, but for a performance standpoint. Developers are constantly figuring out ways to make their plugins better, whether that's to fix any security holes, increase the performance of the site. So the user interface is better, the output is better. So they're always keep those themes and plugins updated. Staying proactive, you want to make sure your site's running smoothly, keeps customers happy. And any outdated plugins, it invites hackers. They can look through it. There's tools that hackers can use that will look for outdated plugins. They're going to look for vulnerabilities on your website and they'll find ways to get in. So keep that locked. Keep your passwords to yourself, 13 minimum characters on a password, side note there. All of that affects your performance. So there is a lot that goes into making sure a website is fast, users are engaged with it, they stick around, search engines like to rank you for it, mobile users will appreciate it. So there is a lot that goes into this. And if you need help with your website, I'm happy to kind of run through and explain if there's any issues with the site, maybe help you kind of fix something. But I do recommend the page speed to check yourself to see what you're missing. GTmetrix does have a regular person language in there that'll give you less tech speak and more, if you're just a business owner trying to understand what's wrong with your site, GTmetrix is that tool. All right, well, I hope that's been helpful. I hope I explained it and it makes sense. feel free to reach out. Would love it if you could subscribe. That would be great. And like this video. Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Bye.